Chapter 1. The Broken Bottle. A young man, cigarette in mouth and hands in trousers pockets, descended a short flight of brick steps leading to the foyer of an uptown Broadway hotel and turned in the direction of Riverside Drive, sauntering in a curious, slow shuffle. It was dusk, the warm July streets, veiled in a mist of sultriness which obscured the sharp outlines of Broadway, swarmed with a pageant of strollers, colorful fruit stands, buses, taxis, shiny automobiles, kosher shops, movie marquees, and all the innumerable phenomena that make up the brilliant carnival spirit of a midsummer thoroughfare in New York City. The young man, clad casually in a white shirt without tie, a worn gabardine green coat, black trousers, and moccasin shoes, paused in front of a fruit stand and made a survey of the wares. In his thin hand he beheld what was left of his money: 2 quarters, a dime, and a nickel. He purchased an apple and moved along, munching meditatively. He had spent it all in 2 weeks. When would he ever learn to be more prudent? $800 in 15 days. How? Where? And why? When he threw the apple core away, he still felt the need to satisfy his senses with some dawdle or other, so he entered a cigar store and bought himself a cigar. He did not light it until he had seated himself on a bench on the drive facing the Hudson River. It was cool along the river. Behind him, the energetic thrum of New York City sighed and pulsed, as though Manhattan Island itself were an unharmonious wire plucked by the hand of some brazen and busy demon. The young man turned and swept his dark, curious eyes along the high rooftops of the city and down toward the harbor where the island's chain of lights curved in a mighty arc, sultry beads in the midsummer mist strung in confused succession. His cigar held the bitter taste he had wanted in his mouth. It felt full and ample between his teeth. On the river, he could distinguish faintly the hulls of the anchored merchant ships. A small launch, invisible except for its lights, glided a weaving path alongside the dark freighters and tankers. With quiet astonishment, he leaned forward and watched the floating points of light move slowly downriver in liquid grace, his almost morbid curiosity fascinated by what might have seemed commonplace to another. This young man, however, was no ordinary person. He presented a fairly normal appearance, just above average height, thin, with a hollow countenance notable for its prominence of chin and upper lip muscles, and expressive mouth lined delicately yet abundantly from its corners to the thin nose, and a pair of level, sympathetic eyes. But his demeanor was a strange one. He was accustomed to hold his head high, so that whatever he observed received a downward scrutiny, an averted mien that possessed a lofty and inscrutable curiosity. In this manner, he smoked his cigar and watched the drive saunterers pass by, for all outward purposes at peace with the world. But he was broke, and he knew it. By tomorrow he would be penniless. With a shade of a smile, which he accomplished by raising a corner of his mouth, he tried to recall how he had spent his $800. The night before, he knew, had cost him his last $150. Drunk for 2 consecutive weeks, he had finally achieved sobriety in a cheap hotel in Harlem. From there, he recalled, he had taken a cab to a small restaurant on Lenox Avenue where they served nothing but spare ribs. It was there he'd met that cute little colored girl who belonged to the Young Communists League. He remembered they'd taken a taxi down to Greenwich Village where she wanted to see a certain movie. Wasn't it Citizen Kane? And then, in a bar on McDougal Street, he lost track of her when he met up with 6 sailors who were broke. They were from a destroyer in dry dock. From then on, he could remember riding in a taxi with them and singing all kinds of songs and getting off at Kelly's Stables on 52nd Street and going in to hear Roy Eldridge and Billie Holiday. One of the sailors, a husky, dark-haired pharmacist's mate, talked all the time about Roy Eldridge's trumpet and why he was 10 years ahead of any other jazz musician, except perhaps 2 others who jammed Mondays at Minton's in Harlem, Lester somebody and Ben Webster, and how Roy Eldridge was really a phenomenal thinker with infinite musical ideas. Then they had all rowed to the Stork Club, where another sailor had always wanted to go, but they were all too plastered to be admitted in, so they went to a dime-a-dance joint where he had bought up a roll of tickets for the gang.